Hey up everyone and welcome to Wiltz, which is a small town to the southeast of Bastogne in Luxembourg in the Ardennes. That means what you're looking at here is Combat Mission Final Blitzkrieg. Specifically, what you're going to be looking at is the scenario The Road to Wiltz. Now, I know that Chris from the Battlefront team has already twitched this and uploaded it to YouTube. I didn't know it when I picked it, and I certainly didn't watch it until afterwards because that would be no fun. But I have watched it since, and it makes a very interesting comparison because we do different things, and of course he's playing against the AI whereas I'm playing against a human being. Well, I assume he's human. I'm playing against a Jarman G from The Few Good Men. Now, I ended up as the Germans because I tossed the coin, and what I've got to do here is take and hold the high ground, North Hill, South Hill and East Hill surrounding the town of Wiltz to control it and open up that vital road towards Bastogne for the rest of the German advance. What I've got to do it with is this horrific ragtag bunch of German units. I have two platoons of Fallschirmjägers, each has a 105mm Stug self-propelled gun attached. Then I have an SS Pioneer platoon mounted in half-tracks, backed up by a support half-track with a 37mm gun and a Puma reconnaissance vehicle. And I have another mounted Panzer Grenadier platoon with another Puma attached, a Panther, and everybody's favourite, the little Hetzer tank destroyer. What kind of enemy am I going to be looking at then? I really don't know. The mission is a meeting engagement, but it says that the Axis should be considered the attacker, so I'm thinking what I'm going to be up against is a light screening force already on the map that's going to be reinforced at some point later on. The briefing also says that the enemy is exiting Wiltz, so maybe I'm going to be facing a delaying action, and I'm looking at a scenario with asymmetric objectives. I've got to grab these three hills. Maybe my opponent is going to get points for inflicting casualties and evacuating his forces off the map. So let's have a look at planning. I want to be moving quickly here, whether my opponent is getting reinforcements or not, just to try and knock him onto the back foot and seize the initiative from the word go. And I've got the two half-track platoons which are going to let me bring some infantry up very quickly. And my initial thoughts were to go left, rush up through these woods with the half-track platoons, smash the South Hill as early as possible, stick some fire support on it, and use that as a position to support an attack on the East Hill with my foot infantry, the Fallschirmjägers. That would hopefully leave me with two of the objectives and a dominant position. The downside to that is that, one, I am sort of expecting him to have some forces on the map already quite forward deployed, which could be an issue if I want to try and flank that East Hill because that's such a dominant position. And two, I can also expect my opponent to get some reinforcements. If he has reinforcements, they're going to pop up on a road on his side of the deployment area. There's only two of those. There's one in Wiltz itself which is far too exposed. If reinforcements are coming in, the mission maker is going to have them pop him over here, right in a position to flank my attack on the South Hill. So I really like this plan, but it seems reasonable to expect that it could go very wrong very quickly. And what I'm kind of inferring off the briefing tells me that it's a bad idea. So what else could I do? Well, the right flank is a narrow valley, so that's too constricted to push on its own. And besides, I'd have to attack the East Hill in the middle to stop myself from getting flanked if he's got forces up there. So that pretty much leaves the centre just attacking the East Hill. Is that a good idea? Well, the payoff for taking it is huge. From up there, I can dominate the town, I can isolate both of the objectives. That's the major objective off on that hill, that's worth 500 points as opposed to the 250 points each of the other two objectives. And once I get it set up there, he's going to have a hell of a time kicking me out. And naturally, if I'm up there, that will secure the left flank of any push down the right, and I can focus on pushing me out of the North Hill. The downside is that, like I keep saying, I'm kind of inferring that my opponent's going to have some forces already on the map, and that's such a good dominant position, I would expect him to have something up there. It's solid defensive terrain, so it could be difficult, and he's got a bit of a reverse slope to play with as well. But a couple of quick experiments on the quick battle version of the map, and I reckon I can just about get a half-track platoon up there in 5 minutes. I've got some mortars on standby, off-map mortars, combine a 5-minute headlong rush with a half-track platoon with a pre-planned artillery barrage, and we're in business. So, Let's see what happens when you overanalyze the mission briefing and you end up with a plan based on a load of assumptions. I'm not going to lie, this really isn't my finest hour, this. There's a nice combination of bad luck, technical incompetence, poor decision making, but most interestingly, you're going to see me coming to terms with the fact that the dynamics between the German army and the American army are a lot different in Final Blitzkrieg than they are in Battle for Normandy. Unfortunately though, before we get on to that, we've got to deal with some incompetence. You can see the timer up in the top right. I've got 5 minutes to get into position to storm the East Hill if I want to take advantage of the mortars, which I do. These guys here are the Panzer Grenadier platoon on the left, who are rushing up the side of the hill to get into position to cover the objective. The half-tracks can't pass through the woods because the terrain is too difficult, so the infantry are going to be hopping out to get into position. Except they're not going to hop out because I've managed to screw the orders up. I can't remember exactly what I did, but the half-tracks are reversing away into cover and the Panzer Grenadiers are still statting them. And just to add insult to injury, those other little guys you can see running around back there are dismounted Fallschirmjägers. So essentially the Panzer Grenadier platoon has had a nice ride in a half-track, but ultimately it hasn't got any further than the people who walked. At the same time, the actual assault force, the SS Pioneer platoon, is stuck in traffic. Pushing a load of vehicles through constricted terrain can be a path-finding pain in the arse in most combat mission games. It's just how it works. So I ended up giving this lot plenty of orders to make sure they didn't get stuck. And as usual, micromanagement has totally backfired. I also decided that one of the 105mm self-propelled guns should go first in case there was anything nasty waiting for them. And that hasn't helped either because it's just getting in the way. Something I haven't really thought about yet, but I will do in a bit, is that the Pioneers are seriously lacking in the kind of automatic and semi-auto weapons that you want in your assault force, especially if you're attacking dense terrain like woods. But at the moment, that's sort of a non-issue because it looks like the war's going to be over before they actually get anywhere. On the right flank, meanwhile, I'm edging one of the Pumas forward for a bit of reconnaissance, and it gets the first contact of the game. There are some Americans running around in the woods in their dressing gowns, and the Puma crew, fairly surprisingly, spot and engage them. This is good because I'm shooting up the enemy. This is bad because it's confirming what I'm thinking about the enemy, which is that they're deploying quite far forward, and that's going to have some important consequences. Back with the Pioneers, the first half-track has gotten through and is crossing the clearing, but the second one is stuck in the mud, blocking the third. This isn't the kind of blitzkrieg that I was looking for here. Half-track number 2 eventually frees itself, goes off with the third one not too far behind it, but by now I've changed my mind. I've lost my nerve. Instead of rushing to the objective like they're supposed to be doing, they're going across the clearing into the woods to provide a bit of closer fire support. I've seen those very close, very forward American soldiers on the right flank, the ones that Puma was shooting at, and I've decided that that means that there must be some enemies dug in on the East Hill objective, and I don't want my lightly armed Pioneers doing a headlong frontal assault into them. Suddenly we've gone from blitzkrieg to slow and steady. This is going to cause me a lot of problems. The first of which is that an infantry assault on the East Hill syncing up with the pre-arranged mortar barrage is pretty much out of the picture now. It's not a total write-off because I'm convinced there's people on the objective, so hopefully it'll cause some casualties, but chances are whoever's on there won't be cowering in shell shock when my pixel trip will finally get there, and instead they're going to be up, alert and shooting back. The biggest problem right now though is that I've gone from a lightning strike to seize the initiative, seize the key terrain and force my opponent onto their back foot from the word go, to being committed to a slow, localized, very concentrated push. The original plan here isn't a bad plan, but it does rely on the speed of a smooth execution. And now that that's gone out the window, the sensible thing to do would be to quickly take a step back, reconsider the situation and pursue some alternative options. And in the next video, what you're going to be seeing is me doing the exact opposite of that and ploughing on like some kind of blind muppet.